I think the Browns' future got worse today, not better, by extending Myles Garrett. Because what they did was extending him, right? They made him now the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history at $40 million per season. He'll get that through the 2030 season. The reason why I have a problem with it is that the Browns have too many holes to fill to, number one, pay one guy $40 million per season at one position that's not quarterback, and number two, to expect to be a Super Bowl contender in the next few years. Like when you sign Garrett right to that big-time deal, right now in the midst of his prime, you are signing him with the thought of he is going to be one of the cornerstone pieces to get us to the Super Bowl. He's 29 years old. What would you say in terms of like elite peak years left in his career? Is it fair to say about 3 or 4 years left for Myles Garrett? Do you expect right now, looking at the state of the Browns, that they will be a Super Bowl contender in the next 3 or 4 years? I don't think so. Again, they got too many holes to fill. But the biggest thing is they are hamstrung for the immediate future here by that gigantic albatross of a contract of Deshaun Watson, which they restructured again. But you're still looking at a cap hit in 2025 for a guy that's not going to play a snap for you of $36 million. A large chunk of the salary cap eaten up by a guy who stinks and not even playing. That makes it harder to build your team because it's $36 million that's essentially dead this year. And next year, this will get restructured, but next year it's $81 million. But still, it's going to be a large portion of the salary cap eaten up by a guy in Deshaun Watson that makes it tougher to build the rest of the roster. And speaking of quarterback, they don't have one right now. Right? Like they got to find a guy. Now it's assumed right they're going to take one in the draft. And let's just say even they do take Cam Ward at number 2. Well, even if they take Cam Ward at 2, who's right now the consensus QB1 in this class, you can't assume Cam Ward is going to come in and be Jaden Daniels 2.0. Daniels is the anomaly where he comes in, turns a franchise around immediately, gets them to the playoffs, and now all of a sudden you look at the Commanders way differently than we did this time last year. Not many rookie quarterbacks can do that. So you can't expect that to happen if you're the Browns if you do draft Cam Ward here at number 2. You have to expect how most rookies have played. Struggle in year 1, maybe start to show some promise and turn the corner here in year 2. And by year 3, you start to feel like, okay, here we go. If you got a true franchise quarterback, you're like, all right, here's our guy. He's rolling. Let's now start, trying to contend for a playoff spot. But we're still talking about bare minimum 3 years here before that's a possibility. Not to mention, outside of quarterback, the Browns need help at receiver. Even though they kept Myles Garrett, they still need another edge rusher on the other side to complement Garrett's talents. You need a running back now that they're not going to bring back Nick Chubb. Your secondary can be bolstered as well. Like, there are still plenty of holes on this roster. Jedrick Wills is a free agent. You're going to bring back your tackle. Like, there are a lot of question marks and holes on this roster to where the Browns are not a quarterback away. They're not a receiver away from being a playoff contender or borderline Super Bowl contender. They have a long ways to go in a crowded and tough AFC to make some hay to get the point where they can feel like they're a Super Bowl contender. So why pay Myles Garrett $40 million a year when really in his peak and his prime, you're not going to be a Super Bowl contender? You may not even make the playoffs in the next few years. I think it's bad business. I don't think that was the right move. Because you look what the Browns truly need. The Browns truly need cheap elite talent. Again, when you look at the Watson contract, some of the salary cap constraints they have, they're 25th in the league right now in terms of most cap space available. So they don't have a lot of cap space right now to sign free agents. They need cheap elite talent. The best way to acquire cheap elite talent through the drafts with premier draft picks. First round picks, second round picks, top 100 picks that are very talented players. You can plug in, feel like they're day one starters, and they're cost controlled for the first few years. That's what the Browns need, a bunch of those guys. How do you get extra draft picks? By trading arguably the best non-quarterback on easily the best non-quarterback that will change teams this offseason or could have changed teams this offseason. Actually, forget that because all the quarterbacks think in terms of, for the most part, outside of Sam Darnold, he is the best player that would have changed teams this offseason. The price the Browns could have gotten for Myles Garrett could have been gargantuan. I think bare minimum, we're talking about 2 first-round picks. So you trade Myles Garrett, you open up that cap space, and you get bare minimum 2 first-round picks here in the next 2 years. You get cheap elite talent. Maybe there's a third-round pick as well added in there. We're talking about maybe 3 top 100 picks over the next 2 years that the Browns could have gotten. Would you rather have 2 first-round picks, 4 total over the next 2 years, right, including the Browns' own, or would you rather have Myles Garrett at $40 million? This is not a knock on Myles Garrett's talent. He's a great player. He's an elite player. But with where the Browns are right now, I don't think it's in their best interest to put all that money into a position, into a player at 29 years old that's realistically probably not going to be in his prime by the time the Browns truly turn things around and are a playoff/Super Bowl contender. I think to me it made a lot more sense than to trade Myles Garrett. That market would have been very competitive because a lot of teams right now need an edge rusher. You could have drafted Abdul Carter if he's there at number 2 as his replacement. And you could have been rebuilding your team with cheap, young talent through the draft with multiple draft picks. That to me is where the Browns should have gone. That's the direction they should have gone. And that's the direction that's in their best interest. Instead, they doubled down to that on mediocrity, essentially. Anchoring themselves to a great player in Myles Garrett, but you don't help yourself and don't help the team get better. And what good is it to have the best edge rusher, one of the best edge rushers in the league, getting 15, 16 sacks a year if you're winning 5 games? If you don't have enough talent to supplement around him to play meaningful football. That's why when I look at this deal, I just don't think it was the right move for Cleveland. I know he's a franchise legend. The fans love him. I get it. Homegrown. You want him to be like that Joe Thomas of the defense. Hall of Fame guy. Browns Hall of Famer. I get it. But I think it was in your best interest, the team's best interest, your future's best interest, to get as competitive as you can quickly to turn Garrett into premier draft picks, build your team with young talent, and go from there. They need some youth on this team. Could have gotten it by trading Garrett. And instead, we're sitting here talking about Myles Garrett now resetting the market and becoming the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history, averaging $40 million per year. The other thing here that I want to get into before I get your thoughts on if you think that the Browns made the right or wrong move in retaining and extending Myles Garrett is, I am shocked he decided to stay. I didn't think he was bluffing. I thought he was legit where he said, forget the money, I want to win. And so even though Andrew Berry said multiple times at every avenue possible when he was talking to the media or anybody that we are not trading Myles Garrett, adamant, we're keeping 95. I thought he had to say it, right, to drive the price up. Because once you say, hey, we're trading Myles Garrett, you lose some leverage. I thought this was just a leverage play. Yeah, we could say it now. It's also easier to say it now at the combine. We don't have to trade him tomorrow. I would have bet almost my life. So thank God I did not. I would have bet up to my life almost that Myles Garrett would have been on a different team in 2025 to start the season. Just because I thought, how often do you see when these trade requests come down and how adamant he was, by the way, when talking to the media that he wanted out because he wanted to win, didn't care about the money. I believed him. Listen to this. He was on right here on the Infinity Sports Network, Zach Gallup show, back on Radio Road during the Super Bowl. I bought in. You tell me, where are you convinced right now when you hear Myles Garrett explaining to Zach why he wanted out of Cleveland? Take a listen.
This is all about football. It's not about money or attaining another contract. Just want to play meaningful football at the end of the year. Be playing it late into January and into February, and having that feeling of holding that trophy.
I believe him because he really never got close with the Browns for the most part in his career outside of the year in 2020 when they got to the second round of the postseason. And when you look at it, if he was traded, he may not have gotten $40 million a year from whatever team traded for him, the Commanders, the Bills, you name it, right? Whoever was rumored to be interested. But he would have gotten pretty damn close. And so I for sure thought, okay, if you're Myles Garrett and you can get $36 million a year on a contending team, or 40 from the Browns, I thought for sure 10 times out of 10, every day and twice on Sunday, he would have said, let me take the 36 on a contending team and let me go try to compete for a Super Bowl. I am shocked that he folded. I don't think it was a leverage play. I don't think he was just holding the Browns ransom and the entire time he knew, hey, I'm just going to sign here, but this is all I'm trying to do is just drive my own price up. I really don't think that was the case. And if that was the case, he's an excellent, excellent bluffer. Would never want to play cards with him. Put him on Survivor where he can lie with anybody here right to your face. Amazing stuff there. But I'm for sure shocked that the ending that we got here is Myles Garrett staying in Cleveland.